The 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah Peloton, rolling through northern Utah's Cache Valley. Stage 1, 86.9 miles North Logan to North Logan. Agricultural community that is northern Utah's Cache Valley, site of today's Stage 1 of the 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah. Stage 1 presented by the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies. More than 80 businesses united by one simple mission of enriching lives. It is a brand new stage to the Tour of Utah. Hi everybody, Steve Brown along with Todd Gogulski. Almost 87 miles. Who knows what's going to happen today, but it is the site of the first real racing because yesterday it was the prologue. Today, they're out on the road.
Yesterday, a very short event, only 8.5 minutes, but today we got 87 miles of road to settle the score. Some circuits here in town in North Logan at the end with the climb. Should be very dynamic at the finish. Let's
go back to yesterday because James Piccoli, the Canadian, comes out and absolutely smokes the prologue. He was here, he said, as a serious contender for the GC, and he certainly put his stamp on things yesterday.
He delivered. He is one of the riders who really showed me the most confidence coming into the race. He told me 2 days before the start he was here to win it overall, and he showed yesterday that he means business. He's not known as a time trial specialist, but with the climbing in the prologue yesterday, it was not a specialist type of time trial, and he delivered in emphatic fashion.
He made that left turn. That was the real technical area of yesterday's prologue, and then still had enough left to grind it out and take the lead, and it held up. He won by 5.55 seconds, and he wears yellow as the day begins today. Now, then look at the top five. Piccoli with that 5.55 lead over Lawson Craddock. Vetkov comes in just 6 seconds behind, and then the rest of the top five. There's some big names and some surprises as well, perhaps.
Very stacked field here, but definitely close at the top of the time trial standings. Some notables: 3 former winners, Joe Dombrowski, also Rob Britton and Lachlan Morton, and 2 other men to keep your eyes on. Ben Herman, 2nd overall last year, and Keegan Swerble, the American who a lot of people think has the legs to do some damage in Powder Mountain tomorrow.
Yeah, you got the veterans Rob Britton and Lachlan Morton in there, but here's a look at today's map. It begins in North Logan. They start with a little bit of neutral, and then look out because the racing begins on a rather flat area out towards the west of Logan.
Yeah, over there into Cache Valley, 2 circuits up above Newton, then back into North Logan. This final circuit, 5 laps with the climb and the descent, where people who are dropped, the sprinters, will try and get back on to contest the finish. Look for a lot of action in the closing 35 miles.
And earlier today when they got started, Todd, it didn't take long. That's the mass start, the neutral for a while, but they were out very, very short period of time before the first attack came, and trying to get away on this rather short circuit breeds some real aggressive riding. We can expect to see that throughout the tour.
A little bit shorter stages this year, Steve, as you mentioned, and it was neutral. As soon as the flag is dropped, immediately Neri Satoli goes on the attack. One of the Israel Cycling Academy men is there. Wildlife Federation covering, blistering attacks from the gun. It didn't take long before it regrouped again. DC Bank goes on the attack. Wildlife Federation once again covering, and this would end up becoming the move that is 5 men off the front. And in the first intermediate sprint there at Newton, you can see Boardman, 111, leading it out as he goes very early, but up on the right side. Prado, fresh off of the Pan Am Games silver medal 2 days ago, taking that win.
So Ignacio Prado picks up the 5 points in that first intermediate sprint. And then KOM number 1, and once again, Prado coming out of the pack, going to contend it in the white kit there with the red pants. And look out, because he is, well, he's on a mission. He says, I want these points as well.
Yeah, he looks great. He's going for everything. He's a track racer and a road racer. Once again, coming around Boardman. He's the reigning Mexican national road champion, and he just picked up the first intermediate sprint and the first King of the Mountain sprint at this year's Tour of Utah. And KOM number 2, same climb. It's not a big climb, and once again, it looks like Prado's going to ride away with it, but this time Boardman hunting him down, and he continues, kicks once again, and right there you can see Prado looks over, he sees it, he's like, I cannot match that. So they are tied on mountain points right now, both at 7, with 1 King of the Mountain sprint remaining in the race today.
And then the 5 leaders still out front here. This was that break early, and they're riding together. Again, a relatively short stage, the first time it's ever been contested in the Tour of Utah. And these are a look at the 5 that are out front right now.
And these guys have been working really well together, except for when they've hit those King of the Mountain sprints and those intermediate sprints that we just showed you. And that's when all that cooperation goes out the window. But otherwise, they know that if they want to have any chance of staying away from the field, everybody has to work on the front, take your turn, let the others draft behind, get your rest, and then when your turn comes around again, you got a little bit better legs to take your next pull.
And there's a call for the water bottle right there from Prado, who has expended more than enough energy so far, and he'll wait and then get a little sustenance coming up here. And this is what we're looking at as far as the terrain is concerned. And then look at the gap between those 5 and the peloton. It is an agricultural area, and there's the mass of the peloton. And they're not that far behind, just a couple of minutes behind those 5 riders out front with 75.4K to go, or 46.8 miles. And
James Piccoli in yellow, as he had a fantastic ride yesterday in the prologue time trial. His teammates, Alfredo Rodriguez, George Simpson, have been doing a lot of the work on the front for about the first hour of the race. It was just those 2 guys trying to keep the breakaway of 5 men from getting too much time. We still got Simpson up there on the front. It looks like Rodriguez has pulled back into the group just a little bit. And with a 2-minute gap, it's really not that big a gap where the field has to be too concerned that that break is going to stay away to the end, because when they hit the circuits in North Logan, the field is going to go ballistic.
Yeah, you rode those circuits this morning. There are, in each circuit, there's the climb involved, as there's James Piccoli, our overall leader. They're not terribly difficult climbs, are they? But you have 5 of them at the end of the 80 miles or so.
Yeah, and really interesting thing about terrain in professional cycling is we often think about it just specifically as a number. How steep is it? How long is it? What's the altitude? What's the temperature? But another factor that's important, and maybe the most important, is how fast they have to ride up it. So how aggressive they are. And if the field is super aggressive, we're going to see all kinds of explosions in the group, guys getting dropped, people getting gapped off. But because we have Powder Mountain tomorrow, we may see people just being a little bit more reserved today because everybody's afraid of tomorrow's summit finish.
Now look at our weather today, 85 degrees, just a beautiful August day in the Cache Valley. 23% humidity, which for the state of Utah is a little bit high, actually. Very little wind to speak of, and the forecast is for sunny weather.
Yeah, I thought it felt a little muggy.
Yeah, 23%. Just to let you know where we are, by the way, just a few miles south of the Utah-Idaho border in the northern part of the state. Now, we've been here before, not quite as far north as it is right now, but we have raced Logan several times in the past. But this is the first time for this stage in particular with this route. And so these guys are unexplored territory as far as the roads are concerned, but most of the conditions good, most of the surfaces good for racing, some narrower roads because it is more farming community, but in general, plenty of room to get done what you need to do here in stage 1. Almost 46 miles remaining. The group out front is still 5. And we'll be back with more racing here in stage 1 of the 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah. The 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah is brought to you by the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies. More than 80 businesses united by one simple mission of enriching lives. Zions Bank, for banking built to keep up with life. Zions Bank is for you. University of Utah Health, official medical provider of the Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah and you. Snowbird, proud partner and host venue of the Tour of Utah. And by the Utah Office of Tourism. Experience life-elevating moments in and between Utah's mighty 5 national parks and on the greatest snow on earth.
It's time for University of Utah Health Tour Insider.
Crashes can occur at any point during any stage of the Tour of Utah as the riders are in close proximity to each other. Areas that are of particular concern to the medical team are the feed zones and the corners where the riders come even closer together. The magnitude of a crash going downhill when the riders may reach 60 miles an hour can also be worse, particularly in this area of Big Cottonwood Canyon where the roads are steeper. The medical team must remain vigilant throughout the race in order to provide appropriate medical care.
This is the aerial look at Cache Valley here in northern Utah as Stage 1 continues. They'll go 87 miles before the day is over. But that peloton staying together, and here's a look at the profile. At the right-hand side, you see those 5 peaks. Those are the 5 circuits with the climbs in each circuit. And Todd, you rode that today. Not horrible as far as the climb is concerned, but it could be a separator towards the end of this, and who has what left will be the question, correct?
Yeah, it's a little tricky to predict, and when I spoke with some of the favorite sprinters, guys like Travis McCabe, Ty Magner, so on, they weren't sure how today was going to play out.
Well, let's find out how it's playing out in the peloton as we go inside the Tour with Chad Andrews on the moto.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Got some pretty good intel. I love the conversation you guys were having just before I brought in. Talked to the teams in the compound today, and quite frankly, must have, out of all the teams that I talked to, everyone had a different opinion on how this is going to finish. Some said shatter, some said together, some said 30, some said 20 riders to the finish line. So I thought that was interesting. I did talk to Heath Blackgrove of Elevate. He told me that he would be comfortable with 4 minutes. I just talked to Danny Van Hout of Wildlife Foundation. He said they would only give us a 1:45, so it seems to be waffling between those two. One last thing, Prado's looked for water for the past 25 minutes. One of the guys in the breakaway has not been able to get any.
Wow, now there's something to look for your team support. All right, Chad, thank you very much. Prado, the guy off the back of that group right now, the one we talked about who had just come from the Pan Am Games. Chad's reports will come throughout this tour, brought to us by the LHM Group of Companies. More than 80 businesses united by one simple mission of enriching lives. That's interesting. When you cannot get water from your team, you've got an issue there.
Well, it's there's a lot of logistics out on the road, and just what we just saw was that the Shimano neutral car came up and handed him 2 bottles, so at least he got something. It's probably not necessarily what he's used to drinking in terms of his sports drink, but he got liquid, and that's a big deal right now.
Yeah, there you see he's got that bottle on the bike right there. Well, I think it's interesting what Chad was talking about, that it's fractured as to how they expect it to go from team to team. How much will you have out there? How much of a distance? Right now it's a 1:35 on the peloton from the 5 guys out front. Will they come together, and will it be a bunch sprint? Will it separate with those 5 climbs? Or will it be someplace in between, maybe 8 or 10 people who will make it and they'll fight it out?
Yeah, and my belief, I get it, when he talked with different directors, it's really hard to know what will happen because they have no track record on this circuit at the end. But my belief is we're going to see a group of at least 50 riders come to the finish line together. I just compare it to some other courses we've had, like Bountiful, up the Bountiful bench, and we've had groups of 30, 40 riders there. I believe this circuit to be a little bit easier. There's some time to get back on from the climb to the finish. It's 4.2 miles. So I do believe we're going to have a pretty big group, and I think that the sprinters, the fast men, will take the day.
Couldn't ask for better race conditions, though. This is temperature-wise. In fact, in speaking to the riders the last couple of days, they thought it was going to be ideal. It wasn't the triple digits that Utah, even northern Utah, experienced a week and a half ago. They were over 100 degrees. This week expected to be in that 80s to 90s, depending on where the venue is going to be. And of course, when they make that climb to Powder Mountain, they will be at elevation. It will be significantly cooler, as it was yesterday at Snowbird.
Yeah, and it really makes a difference. I mean, 15 degrees, when you're out there for hours, it makes a big difference in how much liquid you need to take on board and just continue to hydrate with.
Yeah, there's a classic look at this. Is what all northern Utah is all about right there, the agricultural area. There are dry farms up here. There are irrigated farms as well. And of course, you see that combine there. It is that time of year when they start to cut some of those crops. But for the riders, they will be oblivious to most of this unless they get the dust from that cutting, which sometimes occurs when you get into this heavy agricultural areas.
Again, that's Danny Van Hout there talking with his rider Boardman. Van Hout been running this program for over 2 decades, and the new sponsor this year. But Van Hout, incredibly experienced team director and owner.
Well, stage 1 continues as we take the break here. Some sights and sounds of what's going on in this year's Tour of Utah.
Can you say brings back memories of Moab? We lived there once all together.
What's the jersey for?
It's commemorating 2018. We took a trip to Moab.
That's cool.
As a team.
And you get to wear it in the race?
We get to wear it in the race because I was so aggressive.
Well, here, look at the leader jerseys after the prologue. Piccoli, of course, the overall leader in yellow. Fetkov, the Utah Sports Commission best sprinter. Lawson Craddock, the Office of Tourism's King of the Mountain. Joao Almeida, the WCF Insurance Best Young Rider. He also has the most aggressive rider, but can't wear 2 jerseys. So you saw a moment ago why the jersey has changed hands. And then Tony Baca, the American First Credit Union fan favorite international rider. And there's Kyle Murphy, who wears that most aggressive rider jersey. Proud sponsor of the most aggressive is the Larry H. Miller dealerships, driven by you. So Kyle Murphy in 5th after the prologue will wear it because Almeida technically is the most aggressive rider, but you can't wear them both.
Right, he's got to wear the best young. So Murphy there just having some fun, and you can see that the atmosphere in the peloton here pretty relaxed at this point. With the group of 5 being a minute 20 off the front, there's not a lot of concern. I mean, really amazingly, for the last half hour, George Simpson for Elevate KHS, the 25-year-old out of Fort Collins, has been the only guy on the front. The breakaway doesn't seem to be super motivated. They're just kind of hanging off the front. And so Simpson is a time trial specialist, and he's just up there riding.
Well, you see that whole Elevate KHS team up front there, just controlling things at the front of the peloton for their rider, James Piccoli, who continues to wear this yellow through the day, and I'm sure would obviously like to preserve it going into tomorrow. He told me just a couple of days ago he felt Powder Mountain was one of those stages that he really could perhaps just burn this thing and really put his stamp on the entire week. He's here for the GC. He had a couple of stages that he thought were very conducive to his abilities and talents, and tomorrow is certainly one of them.
Yeah, big time for him, and it's a real test for James Piccoli to perform at this level of competition. To be able to defend that jersey on Powder Mountain will be a breakthrough ride for him. He's a guy who has done incredibly well the last couple of seasons. He won the Tour of the Gila, which is a very mountainous race in southern New Mexico earlier this year. But the Tour of Utah, that's a whole nother level. We've got World Tour riders here, riders that have raced the Grand Tours, the Giro, the Vuelta, the Tour de France, the 3-week granddaddies of bicycle racing. And so we'll see. He's going to be put to the test.
Well, James Piccoli, as I said, his team controlling the front of the peloton. He spoke with our Kristen Kenny before the start of today's race on the importance of being able to maintain that control.
All right, James, you're in the yellow. I know this is stage 1 today, but how would you break down this stage?
So normally it should be a sprint day. I mean, the sprinters don't get that many chances in this year's Larry H. Miller Tour Utah because some of the stages are so hard. So So we're counting on the fact that it'll be a sprint day and that we'll have a couple teams who have some similar interests.
So can you take me through your strategy a little bit? We're not going to tell anyone.
Well, I mean, that's it. We'll do our best to, our first goal will be to defend the jersey for sure. And then having a sprint is good for our sprinters, but it also accomplishes our first task of defending the jersey. So I think a sprint finish is in our best interest.
All right, thank you so much. Good luck today.
Thank you very much.
So Todd, if they get out of today's stage and he's still in yellow, obviously a major hurdle overcome.
Yeah, it just gets sort of that nervousness of being in yellow out of the way. The team comes together and they defend. You can see him talking in his race radio there. So back to the director. He's got the earpiece in his right ear. He's holding on to it right there. There's a constant communication with the car and other riders on the team. And, you know, his team, he won the Mogollon stage of the Gila, which is the first summit finish there earlier this year, and his team defended. He won the overall. So it's not like Elevate KHS has never been in this position before, but this is a bigger race. There are bigger teams, riders with greater results, and this is a real test.
Still 38 miles to go. When we come back in our next segment of racing, we'll see them in town, which will be the start of the final 5 circuits here in stage 1. North Logan, Utah sits in the cradle of beautiful Cache Valley, known for outdoor adventures, hands-on heritage experiences, and performing and fine arts. Around the vibrant university town of Logan, Utah, Cache Valley's rural roads and picturesque mountain views make it pedal paradise for new and experienced riders alike. The region's mostly flat, smooth terrain offers a few rolling hill sections and canyon climbs for an added challenge. And you'll pass snow-capped peaks, lush farms, and working dairies and factories. That look at North Logan was brought to you by the Utah Office of Tourism. Begin planning your next life-elevated adventure at visitutah.com. Peloton coming now into North Logan for the first time, and they will make that 5-lap circuit. This is the group out front, the 5 individuals. And their margin's still holding at about 1.5 minutes, 1:35 right now, with 36.5 miles still to go. Those 5 riders, it's a very ambitious look for them to stay out. However, look for them to be reeled in at some point in time, Todd, during these 5 circuits.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Very tough for them to stay away, as Camden Vodka coming through right now, the 23-year-old for Wildlife Generation. Just behind him, the Italian Manuel Bongiorno. And, you know, it's a very international group off the front right now. The DC Bank rider, Travis Samuel, off the front there. He's a Canadian, or he's on the front. And we've also talked about, of course, Ignacio Prado, the Mexican, who's a 2-time national road champion in Mexico and just back from the Pan Am Games a couple of nights ago at 2 a.m. he got in the night before the prologue.
And he leads that 5 group right now, and 1K to the sprint, 1K to go.
So let's see what we get this time. It's been these 2 men on the front have been the real protagonists for the intermediate sprints and the King of the Mountain sprints so far today.
Tied coming in as far as the sprint points are concerned for the other intermediate sprints. Now Prado dropping back again. As this group working well together, everyone taking their turn, pull at the front, looks like.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm not seeing, and it's reflected in the gap at 1:35, is that they're all rolling through, but they're not. There's no sense of urgency with them, as you notice the body language. I think they've resigned to the fact that they didn't get a big enough gap, and so they're just going through the motions off the front and trying to soak up points for sprints and mountains.
Now that gap has actually expanded to 2:05.
Oh, well, that's good.
So a little bit, and now here they come as they head for the sprint points here. Prado looking around in the white kit, and this one's going to be contested as well. So all 3 intermediate sprints have been contested.
Travis Samuel leading it out, but then once again, Prado coming around him.
So he's going to get those sprint points for first, and now leads the sprint point battle, picking up 2 wins and a second here so far in the intermediate sprints today. And then he'll settle back into second wheel as they come through the start-finish for the first time.
And now that they've got that out of the way, they're going to start to think about these finishing circuits. The climb, the descent back down to the finish, and we can also see the real lack of sense of urgency in this peloton right now. The Donner Akon team there lined up a bunch of those riders, actually led their director, the famous German rider who retired a handful of years ago, Gerald Ciolek, who won one of the monuments of cycling, Milan-San Remo, one of the 5 biggest one-day races in the world, and also is a German national champion. I was talking with him before the race, asking him how much. You can see them. We got right on the front, we've got one Elevate KHS man, that's George Simpson, but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Donner men line up. And I asked Gerald how much he gives his riders sort of coaching and direction, and he says a lot. He says they really look forward to his words of wisdom because he's raced at a very high level. And one of the riders coming up, and this is the role of the helpers in the team. You go back to the car, you get as many bottles as you can, and then you bring them up to the front to your teammates and hand them off, and that keeps your teammates in position should anything happen in the race, a crash or an attack that they need to respond to. And it also saves their energy. Going back to the car and then having to ride back to the front uses a lot of energy.
So the peloton now going through the start-finish for the first time. You see that traffic up front. Lots of blue jerseys. There are lots of different teams with blue jerseys on. 3 or 4 very similar kits, and it's going to try to distinguish them. And it's very interesting if it stays together like this now with 5 laps to go as they come through the start finish. But that group of 5 still out front by a little over 2 minutes ahead of the peloton. And at what point do they start to reel them in again? And for the uninitiated, we talk about the peloton reeling them in. It seems a little bit counterintuitive that a group this big can travel so much faster than groups that have all the space to go wherever they want up front. But that peloton will be able to travel, what, up to 15% faster at times than the group up front, especially if they're not working together. And right now, they're pretty mellow up front.
Yeah, I think this breakaway is, it's just going to come back through the just general racing of the peloton when they start to go for these circuits. So they're not even going to try to chase them down. They're just going to suck them up because of the aggressiveness in the field.
More racing in stage 1 straight ahead here in the 2019 Tour of Utah. Today's broadcast in high definition is brought to you by the Utah Sports Commission, proud partner of the Tour of Utah. The aerial view of the peloton, and they're on the first circuit through North Logan. They'll make 5 of them before this is all over with. 33 and change remaining, and they're going through the feed zone here in just a moment. Get a little bit of refreshment here. Been a beautiful afternoon for racing, though, from a temperature standpoint, weather, and everything else. Terrain not too challenging when it comes to the Tour of Utah, and everything, of course, is relative. 4,310 feet in elevation they will traverse before these 86.9 miles are over. And it looks like right now with 2:10, the peloton 2 minutes and 10 seconds behind the 5 riders, and 1K to the king of the mountain for that lead group up 5. Here's a look at this one, the Category 4 Mahogany Ridge climb, 1.7 miles, and the average max grade, 5.5 is average, 8.2 is max, and the elevation, 4,996 feet, 495 feet in elevation gain, and then that's still 32.8 miles to the finish when they reach the top here.
Yeah, it's kind of a stair-step climb. They head up this road. It sort of, you think you're topping out, and then they jog right and then a quick left, and they have a little kicker where it gets a little bit steeper, but it is not real long. It's just kind of a grinding climb up to it.
About the time you hit it for the 5th time, you realize that there is a climb. However, now you're looking at the green zone, and the green zone at the 2019 Tour of Utah presented by Wildlife Generations. They're committed to protecting wildlife and habitat through education and conservation, and they sponsor that feed zone. And I'm sure the green zone rather. I'm sure they're quite happy to get into it here, these riders. It's been one of those, I guess, kind of a mellow stage so far, Todd, and the first time that's contested. How much do you learn as a rider when you come to the end of this one? How much will you be able to take in that will be, if you see this again, for example, in coming years, this stage that you'll be able to apply?
I think you'll actually learn a fair amount. This will be pretty typical that you would have a group off the front, because a group always gets away early in the race. And it'll be pretty typical that sprinters want to see if they can hang and win the stage. And if other riders want to get rid of the sprinters that are not pure sprinters, then their teams will try and make it hard. So I think we'll learn a lot in 5 circuits. Here's that right turn, so it levels out just a little bit. They jog right, and then a quick left and a little bit of a kicker here. And to me, I'm looking at these riders right now, and I'm thinking they are looking at each other more than they are thinking about winning the bike race. And Boardman, 111, and Prado, the second man there, number 94, they are tied on mountain points right now. So whichever one of them finishes in front of the other, and just up here in 200 meters, will be wearing the King of the Mountains jersey tomorrow. So this is a very important moment for them.
Notice the gap has come down now to 1:40 again, so about a 25-second drop in terms of the separation between these 5 and the peloton, and a good crowd up there for these. A lot of these folks, this is the first opportunity they've had to see the Tour of Utah, because although we've been in Logan before, they've never been this far north, and they have not been to this specific area.
And
so
here we go.
Newness, and it's going to be contested again.
Yeah, Boardman hitting out there first. Ignacio Prado trying to come on terms, but Boardman with a huge kick. He gets it, and he will be your leader of the King of the Mountains classification on stage number 2.
He looks around, now settles back in with a little under 33 miles remaining in this stage.
You got to always remember, the most important thing in the race is yellow, but if you can win the King of the Mountain competition in the Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah, that is a huge accomplishment, and it looks like Boardman is one of the men who wants to fight for it.
Peloton trailing by 1:40. And they're coming up to the crest there too, the King of the Mountain, in just a few moments. And again, staying together, the front of that peloton is extremely tight still.
So yeah, that pack really, once again, seems to just really be going through the motions right now. They're not really ramping up the pace yet. We haven't started to see the attacks, the pack all together. Nobody that I've seen being shed out of the field. Certainly that will change in the next 4 laps. They're not going to ride it like this every time, but at this point, they're still not concerned that the group of 5 is too far away. They think that they're within reach, but pretty soon the sprinters teams will come to the front and they'll start to drive the pace.
So how do you start to make that move with the 5 almost 7-mile circuits? And they've still got 32 miles left to go. At what point do you start to worry a little bit, if you're in that peloton, about trying to reel them in, or is this gap at 1:40 so insignificant that almost any time before that final circuit you can make a move?
I think they would want to do something on the next circuit and start to make things happen. I mean, 1:40 is not insignificant, and realize that we've been watching the 5 breakaway riders, and they have not been going really hard. They have not been super deep. So they could be playing this game where once the field starts chasing, then they start to really pile it on too. And that sometimes can work for the breakaway.
There's a look at the leaders. Looks like 4 of them there now. And further behind is the 5th one, but Boardman contesting and leading now in KOM points. More racing straight ahead.
In the beginning was the greatest snow, and then the biggest show. But the encore is ongoing and growing. So I say jump to it, jump. Since 2002, Utah has hosted more than 150 World Cups, World Championships, or Olympic-related events at Olympic and other world-class venues. It might just make you feel better. It might just make you feel strong. It might just take you somewhere that you never would have thought. in the spirit of faster, higher, stronger. We're bigger, better, and broader. Winter and summer. And what's next? As the state of Utah and the Utah Sports Commission work to expand our Olympic footprint, we're ready, willing, and able to again welcome the world to the state of sport.
It is the graphic look at stage one. They are in North Logan City. You see the pin that shows where the now four leaders are out front as Boardman has been dropped, and then the peloton behind it. So the gap is 1:40. There's the Boardman is 20 seconds behind as he has lost contact with the 5. So it is now down to 4 after Boardman got his KOM points. Then apparently he was content to drop back, and he'll be reeled in shortly by the peloton. And I'm sure everyone else is expecting that these 4 will also be reeled back in before they have completed the remaining 29 and change miles to the finish line.
I think it really shows that Sam Boardman, the 23-year-old American who now is leading that mountains classification, he is thinking a lot about trying to defend that. So why waste any energy riding off the front when you're going to get caught soon anyway?
Let's go back inside the tour with our Chad Andrews on the moto. Chad?
Hey guys, couple of interesting developments that I've noticed. First of all, when I was talking to Danny Van Hout earlier today, he was super content having 2 riders. Well, had 2 riders in the breakaway. He said, we're going after the KOM points, it's plain and simple. Then I was getting ready to go to the Neri Satoli car, ask him about their intentions, because Buongiorno hasn't had any points in anything. Just as I was about ready to go back there and ask them what their plan was, since their rider kind of was stuck out nowhere in the breakaway, the car disappeared. So that kind of told me everything I needed to know. Then one final thing, Todd, you said that you rode the climb. The climb now has become a little bit harder because the roads here in Utah are full of black tar, and the tar makes the course really heavy. And it has these little nasty things we call tar snakes, so they're not difficult climbing up, but the tar has a tendency to grab your wheels climbing. Then on the descents, ooh boy, we had a couple little fishtails that made me grab onto Stewie a little bit harder. So yeah, that's all we've got right now. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks very much for that insight. We've had 1 crash already, and that's, look, I believe it's Cullen Easter from Project USA 303 Project, who is the individual who's down. You can see he's getting ready to get back on his bike again and ready to go. Yeah, it is Cullen Easter, the American rider, and he's back on his way. Hopefully no worse for wear.
Yeah, he was limping around a little bit there. Looks like he took a bit of a tumble there. His teammate, Nicholas Graef, the South African, giving him a push off. We're down to 3 men now off the front.
Yeah, we saw a puncture just a moment ago, and I believe that was the Neri Satoli rider, the Italian, that was punctured.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was our Neri Satoli man, Manuel Buongiorno, the 28-year-old, punctured out of the breakaway, or some kind of a mechanical. We're not certain it was a puncture, but he is now out, so the break down to 3. Gap coming down just a little bit to 1 minute 30 seconds. Buongiorno getting some service out of our pictures, and we'll see. Honestly, he won't make it back to the front. He's going to get sucked up by the field.
Yeah, 4 more circuits of 7 miles apiece, or 28 miles to go.
So look at the front of the field now. 3 Elevate KHS men, then their leader, then 2 more. So their entire field is led by the entire Elevate KHS team of the yellow jersey wearer, James Piccoli.
Piccoli just went past our camera there.
And they actually just went past Buongiorno. He was still on the side of the road. So the mechanical problem, clearly something more than just a flat tire, because they can do a wheel change in plus or minus 15, 20 seconds. And who knows what the heck is going on.
Definitely getting a wheel change there, but maybe he had the wrong gears.
So it could be, let's look and see. The Shimano neutral support may have disc brake wheels, and it looks like Buongiorno's bike is a normal rim brake bike, so the disc brake wheels will not work. I mean, I'm speculating.
Still waiting there too, obviously. Wow, that's a long change right there.
Yeah, they should just be giving him a spare bike. I don't know why they're not pulling it. Just give him a spare bike. Maybe he doesn't have a spare bike on the car. That's it's really sad to see that.
And now back to the lead group again.
So Prado, Vodka, and Samuel off the front. Vodka, by the way, very young guy, as he's only 19.
Now they're back on the bike again back here. So finally getting things squared away. And he's got a lot of time to make up, obviously.
I mean, that was like 2 minutes. Something really went wrong there.
Minute 30 is the gap between the peloton and our lead 3 riders, and then a chase at 50 behind when racing continues here. North Logan to Logan, and it is stage 1 of the Larry Miller Tour of Utah. The 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah is brought to you by the Utah Office of Tourism. Experience life-elevating moments in and between Utah's mighty 5 national parks and on the greatest snow on earth. And by the Larry H. Miller dealerships, proud sponsors of the 2019 Most Aggressive Rider jersey, driven by you. Well, back here with the stage 1, and a moment ago, Todd, we did confirm that Buongiorno had a puncture, and then they had a problem trying to get that wheel on for whatever reason, but it certainly cost him some time. And Wildlife Generation looking at one of the folks out front there, their rider, Vodka, Camden Vodka, young man, American rider. And they are out front now. Things have fractured a little bit from that lead group of 5. It's now a group of single riders with a 15-20 seconds between them. So you've got 2 riders out front, a minute 20 ahead of the peloton. Then you've got the chase rider 20 seconds behind, as we've got 26 miles to go. There's Travis Samuel in 27th after yesterday's prologue, and by himself out front right now.
Yeah, Samuel just deciding it was time to go it alone at this point. He's a Canadian riding on that squad, and he's picked up a few seconds in intermediate bonuses along the way today, but still, you know, almost 30 seconds down in the general classification. 9th at the Canadian National Championships this year, and you know, he's a solid rider. He's a TT specialist, but staying away from the field by yourself for, you know, 46 kilometers, 26 miles, that's a big ask. It's a huge ask. And, you know, we were talking about this earlier. We were saying, when is the field going to start chasing? They really haven't even started chasing. It's just that through the process of jockeying for position, the breakaway has slowly come apart, and the field's bringing them back.
That gap was as much as 2:05 a while ago, so 45 seconds have been shaved from it. And as you point out, the peloton really has not started to actively reel in that breakaway yet. So you can see a little bit of the visual. That's the individual rider in the chase there, and you can see visually not a whole lot of distance between them. That is Camden Vodka, the 19-year-old American rider, laboring a little bit there, obviously. And now back to our leader, Samuel, again.
It's not a really hard climb, but, you know, it's still a long enough race that you're tired. You've been off the front all day. Remember, these guys got away within the first 10 minutes of this race. And so at this point now, Travis Samuel just trying to make the best of the situation that's almost impossible to survive, but why not go for it and see if somehow, by some stroke of miracle and good legs, you can pull off a win.
Well, no sense leaving anything out there, especially we're about to get to see the rider Vodka get reeled in here. He's the second chase rider.
Ignacio Prado, who's behind Vodka, and he was one of the aggressive men in that break, and so he's now caught. And it's you look at it, it's pretty unceremonious. They don't even look at you. Now he's just buried.
Samuel out front certainly hears the bikes on his tail. He's got a minute lead on the peloton, but he knows they're breathing down his deck, and he's been out there long enough to understand the situation as well, that his chances of survival are slim and none.
Sure, and everybody knows that, but the only way you become a professional in this sport is you fight. You never give up. You always keep trying. And a lot of times that's what can win you the bike race, is just say, even against the odds, you keep going, and sometimes you can pull it off.
There's a look at Vodika now, and he's going to be the next one who will be reeled in by the group as they continue to make their way up to the east bench there of North Logan. They've come from the far western flats of Cache Valley, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Vodika knows it as well. And now
yeah.
he's hit the top, the apex of that climb again, and they still have 40K to go, or 25 miles. Looking around, just checking the gap. About 15 seconds between himself and the peloton. Still a 1 minute gap between Samuel, the leader, and the peloton. And now it's time to just get a little liquid in you and hydrate again for that final push.
Yeah, it's actually always a really good idea before you get caught by the pack. If you got any food, take that last bite, take a couple hits off your bottle, because when you get in the pack, there's a lot more fighting for position. It's harder to do that stuff.
Vodika being swallowed up by the peloton as we step aside, and we'll come back to see who can put stage 1 in the win column. Can Piccoli maintain yellow? Elevate KHS on the front of the peloton, and Samuel still out front alone. That's a look at Travis Samuel of DC Bank, and the question is, how long can he hold on? Right now he's 1:10 ahead of the peloton, but there's still 35.2K to go, so a long way still to go for him. And at 21.8 miles, remains to be seen when, not if, he is reeled back in.
Yeah, 3 more laps. He's in the time trial of his life right now. Luckily for him, this is his discipline. You can see how he has his hands, his forearms up on the tops of his handlebars, so he's not actually holding onto the handlebars. He's simulating the position he would be in a time trial bike that has those narrow aero bars that you would hold on to. So you just sit up there, put your hands in front. And if you look here, back to the peloton, and once again, George Simpson on the front, you can just look straight into the center of his body. That's like the wind goes in there, and he has to push through that. Over here, it's blocked a little bit by where he's putting his hands. It's really a great illustration, those 2 shots we just saw from our great cameramen. And so he's more aero by putting his hands up on the tops of the bars.
But there's obviously a reason why at the front of the peloton they're not assuming the same position, because it's a tougher physical position in which to ride.
Yeah, right, and you have way less control. You're in the peloton there are other riders around you. So sometimes you'll see it when somebody's on the front of a small group, but in the peloton you tend to have your hands on the bars because you just never know what's going to happen. There's people all around.
A gap maintained at about a minute. It's been consistent for the last 15-20 minutes or so, but they still have a long way to go as they come through the start-finish, they being the peloton right now. Samuel continues to lead with 3 laps to go. And we'll get the peloton through the start-finish, and then those 3 remaining laps still to go. Look at our helicopter that's provided some of the amazing images so far of this 2019 Tour of Utah. Travis Samuel all alone out front.
Elevate KHS still all over the front of the field there. No problems for them.
It's going to be so cool.
It's a life-changing moment for the rest of my life.
This is the champion we've been waiting for.
Dwight.
Ow!
Scott Stanley!
Interesting choice of words. It's literally a big deal.
My aim is to prove kindness can change the world.
It is lonely out front, and Travis Samuel knows that as he continues to lead here in stage one of the 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah. He's been on the front almost this entire time. Now he's by himself as the peloton closes up behind him. They are 1 minute. That is the gap, but there's still 30K to go, or about 18 miles. And while we were gone, there was, this is the life in the peloton. You got to be careful of it because mishaps can happen at any moment. And sure enough, the center of the peloton goes down, and boy, it's like dominoes, Todd. And some big names there.
Big names. See Gavin Mannion picking up his bike, one of the leaders for Rally UHC. There's a leader for the Bridge Lane squad, Chris Harper in blue, still on the ground right in the middle of your screen. One of the Nippo Vini Fantini riders not getting up quickly, holding his ribs. Looks like it's going to be up toward the left here. It is. It's just out of our view, but not completely. So at least 10 guys or so down, and it just literally happens in a split second.
Looks like everybody is getting up, but some of them not so quickly. As you mentioned, the Nippo rider, it looks like he was holding ribs or a hip there. Now they're back out at it again, but it looks like some slower than others in terms of trying to regroup and reform that peloton, but at least a momentary problem for 10 or 12 riders. Meantime, Samuel continues to grind away at the lead.
And grind is really a good word to use for him. If you look at his position, the way he's pedaling, it's almost like we would say in cycling vernacular, pedaling squares. He doesn't have a fluid pedal stroke anymore. Really using his upper body a lot, muscling a big gear. It's just because his legs are spent. He's trying to keep going off the front, but it's very hard at this point for him to keep this up.
We saw that kind of technique yesterday in the prologue when they were going up that grade, just using the entire body back and shoulders and everything else to try and give your legs a bit of a break.
For sure. And back to the field, and once again, Elevate KHS. They have been flawless in their defense so far today and really haven't been tested for James Piccoli's defense of the yellow. The break had 5. It was up to a little over 2 minutes, but they've been coming back. Now we're down to 1 guy.
200K to the top of this climb for the peloton right here. And again, that margin still showing about 1 minute. So it hasn't changed significantly. And again, the peloton not showing any real urgency right now, but perhaps the next lap or so you can start to see where they'll pick up that cadence.
Well, it would be interesting to see if they continue to not actively chase our lone leader, Travis Samuel, and maybe it would be close at the end. Maybe it's not a foregone conclusion, but I just can't see him making it. And it's still on the front, George Simpson, the American, who was 3rd in the this year's National Time Trial Championship, and it's like he's doing a 3-hour time trial today.
Travis Samuel heading downhill, a welcome respite for him as we step aside. Postcard of the day presented by the Utah Office of Tourism, proud partner of the Tour of Utah, inviting you to experience the mighty 5 national parks and all the unforgettable landscapes and communities in between. Then come winter, it's the greatest snow on earth. Find inspiration and itineraries at visitutah.com. And welcome in, everybody, to the Utah Sports Commission broadcast booth. Todd Gogolski, Steve Brown, stage 1 of the 2019 Tour of Utah, North Logan to North Logan, as they start to come down the final stretch here. And the only real question starting this was, would there be a bunch sprint at the end, or would things have opened up? Well, it looks like right now we're going to see that bunch sprint. Still 1 man out front in Travis Samuel, but whether he can hold it, very problematic.
Very problematic, and probably, I mean, I was saying maybe 60 riders at the finish. It looks like it could be almost the whole field at the finish today.
Yeah, still 15 miles left for this man, Travis Samuel, and his gap has now been whittled down to 45 seconds. It's stayed at a minute for quite a while. Now you see the board there letting him know 45 seconds behind is the peloton. And there's the man in the yellow jersey, James Piccoli. His team, Elevate KHS, controlled the front of this peloton the entire race, just what they wanted to do, and then absorbing Samuel in the last, probably the last lap and a half, and then it's anybody's stage to win or to lose.
Yeah, all the sprinters now thinking that they actually are going to be contesting this sprint, and they weren't really sure a couple of days ago. I spoke with some of the heavy favorites, guys like Ty Magner, Travis McCabe, people like that, and they all were not confident that this was not going to split up the field, this final circuit with the climb 5 times, but it really does look like the field has the horsepower just to roll over it. 2 laps to go now for Travis Samuel.
Yeah, Samuel comes in under that finish banner, and here's the roar of the crowd. That's got to help you a little bit, at least pick you up with the adrenaline, but his legs right now have got to be spaghetti.
Yeah, at this point, he doesn't have a lot left, and when you see him on the climb, it's going to be very telling. You'll see on the steeper pitches, he will really not have a fluid pedal stroke. Meanwhile, back in the field, people waiting, the sprinters waiting to go for this finish. And one of the big questions I have is Elevate KHS with the man in yellow sitting in third wheel that they're protecting. They also have Eric Young and Sam Bassetti, who can sprint really well. So are they going to use the resources to try and set up Young or Bassetti, or are they just thinking about yellow? And once you start going for multiple objectives, sometimes you lose track of things, and you've divided your strength of your team, and you can lose your big objectives.
So is it an either-or situation, or do you see them going after both?
Well, I think today, the way the team has ridden since George Simpson and Alfredo Rodriguez have done pretty much all the work for that team, I think that they're still going to try and set up Young or Bassetti late to try and win the stage.
All right, well, we'll find out, because they've got just 13.7 miles still to go. But this stage 1 is still obviously in doubt, even though Samuel continues to lead. 40 seconds is now the gap between Samuel and the peloton. And at what point does the peloton decide to get serious and reel him in, or do they just figure attrition will take care of it and they don't really have to make any overt action?
You know, it's hard to say. It doesn't look like they're actually going that slow in the peloton. It looks like it's moving pretty quick. The field's strung out. It's not all bunched up. When you see it bunched up really wide, that typically means it's going slower, but it's fairly strung out. So you can see some people about 30 riders back. It's a little bit thicker. That's where some riders are trying to move up and get better position. These guys here at the back, 121, TJ Eisenhart, the Utah in there at the back. This is not a day for him, so he's thinking about tomorrow or maybe some of the days like Salt Lake City circuit.
And that is the picture of fatigue right there. Travis Samuel, the leader. Still 40 seconds, the gap between himself and the peloton. The DC Bank rider there, trying to get this stage win, just trying to hang on and hope that he finds enough in the tank, enough reserve to at least finish near the front of this, if not get on the podium.
It's going to be tough. Going to be tough. All these fresh legs back here in the group.
That's the Elevate KHS team now. The fourth wheel is James Piccoli in yellow. A little bit of water.
Yeah, notice he just took another drink of water, and you have to think that way. We got 7 days of racing. We're in day number 2. So stay hydrated every day. Keep drinking before you're thirsty. In that first half hour of the race, force yourself to drink even though you're not thirsty. You will need it later. It helps in your recovery. It also helps your performance every stage. If you lose a little bit of body weight due to sweat, oh, look at that.
Oh, there it is.
He literally cannot even fight anymore on the climb. He's almost conceding even though he still has a 35-second gap. You don't see that very often. He is hurting.
Not a very fast pace today. In fact, they're behind what, as he enters the feed zone, they're behind what they anticipated as far as the pace of this race. And perhaps a lot of it is because tomorrow with Powder Mountain coming, everybody knows what kind of a day it's going to be. But this is the reaction a moment ago as the moto came by, and it was like, hey, it's been real.
It's been real, but it hasn't been fun.
No, I'm sure it hasn't. He's still there. He's still on the front now. 30 seconds is the margin. And it's just a question of when, not if. You can see the peloton just in the distance back there. And Travis Samuel's been around long enough to know what the inevitability of the whole thing is now.
Yep, I mean, everybody has been in this position in their careers at usually multiple times. And you know when you don't have what it's going to take to make it happen. And it really, as we've been talking about, the field hasn't had to really mount a concerted chase because the break sort of unraveled on its own and left one man off the front. And one man cannot go that far by himself when the field's so fresh.
That shows it in the compression shot right there. They'll get over that crest, and then Travis Samuel will get a little bit of a break as he goes downhill, but not enough.
The city of Logan was out this morning. When I was out, they actually street swept this entire circuit.
Yeah, it is a new surface, as you can see, and you heard earlier the fact that the asphalt gets those tar snakes on it. Now, not in this stretch because it is newer, but it does get warm. Today's temperature in the 80s hasn't been that kind of heat that will oftentimes melt new asphalt.
Yeah, it's still probably softening it just that little bit. Makes it feel kind of heavy, as Chad was talking about. You don't feel like you're rolling as much as you want to with your effort. And the field coming up here and down now to 15 seconds. So really, at this point, the race is just beginning.
They've still got 12 miles to go for the day, covering more than 86 miles, 86.9 to be exact, and 4,310 feet in climbs. This, of course, is one of the 5 circuits, and with 12 miles to go, they'll have to do this one more time. You get at least a little view there of the elevation gain, especially if you look all the way to the back of the picture there. You can see how far they've come. It comes up and then it steps up a couple of times like a tiered climb, and here it goes right now. Samuel going to be swallowed up by the peloton.
There's Satoli on the front in those fluorescent yellow jerseys, and that is the team of Dyer Quintana, who's their leader for the overall. He's the brother of Nairo Quintana, 2 Colombian riders that are incredibly good. Nairo, the more accomplished for sure, but if you see 41, there he is on the right. That's Dyer Quintana, great climber. We'll see if he's got the legs tomorrow.
Here's the yellow jersey just disappearing from the bottom of your screen. That was, of course, James Piccoli, who wears yellow. And now here comes an attack.
Yeah, Guy Niv, the Israel rider on the Israel Cycling Academy, going on the attack. And a really quick response. So this is like literally the beginning of the actual race starting today. I mean, I shouldn't say that figuratively. The real race started a long time ago, but now they're in these closing circuits and people are starting to get frisky. They're starting to think about doing things to set up their sprinter, or if they don't have a sprinter, doing something to see if they can get away and cause a separation.
Peloton has not had to work too hard today, Todd. So there should be a lot of fresh legs still involved there. And obviously those sprinters that are deep in that pack are now going to come to the front for this last 11 miles and change.
Indeed. And if you're one of the pure fast men in this race, you are loving the fact that they have not hit this climb full gas every time. They only have one more time to do it after this time. This is the first time it's been relatively hard. But up until this, not at all. Jimmy Whalen on the front, or the second position for EF Education First in the pink. A new addition to that squad this year.
A little fresh legs on the left-hand side with the bell there.
Yeah,
we'll see how long he lasts.
He looks pretty fresh.
And then scooting out of the way. Make that right-hand turn.
Schoenberger on the front for Neri Satoli, the Austrian rider. And here comes an attack up the right, another Neri Satoli rider, and they've been really aggressive today. They were the first ones to start attacking at the beginning of the day.
Neri Satoli, one of the Pro Continental teams in the field.
Looks to me like that's Velasco. Simone Velasco, the Italian on that squad, just trying to test some legs, it looks like. But everybody very quick to react right now. And if they had done it like this every single lap, this would have been a different 5 circuits. But they didn't. They rode fairly controlled, and that's why we have such a large group still.
Another attack on the left side now. Going to see the jockeying for position. Looks like 4 riders trying to get away.
And this is the game. This is the chess game that happens. That's Bridge Lane rider on the front there.
Still a lot of racing to be had, however, with 11 miles, 11.3 remaining. Back with more as we put this one to bed here in North Logan. The 2019 Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah has been brought to you by Zions Bank. For banking built to keep up with life, Zions Bank is for you. University of Utah Health, official medical provider of the Larry H. Miller Tour of Utah, and you. Snowbird, proud partner and host venue of the Tour of Utah. The Utah Sports Commission, Utah, the state of sport. And by the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies, more than 80 businesses united by one simple mission of enriching lives. Back to racing here. And here's the finish line with a lap to go right here. The threesome coming through. And the peloton trailing right behind. But you've got 3 riders out front. Only by 10 seconds, however, with still 7.3 miles to go. There's the yellow jersey wearer, number 81, James Piccoli. And he had a problem a few moments ago. We'll see if we can figure out what happened, but you see that's Piccoli pulling off left of your screen. Had a bike change right here and obviously lost some time. But we got to get him a new bike, bring it off the top.
Tense moments when you're the race leader. He's trying to stay calm and collected.
Only had a 5.55 second margin after yesterday. And then he's back on it again. His teammates trying to bring him right back up, get a little draft off the team car for a while.
He'll get a penalty for that.
Depending on how long he stays there, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I think he's kind of got to do it because, you know, what else are you going to do? Take a 15 or 30 second penalty or lose a minute. He's got to get back into the field. That is really unfortunate.
So whatever the problem was, it resulted in him getting a new bike, and now those are the 3 leaders up front trying to get away and put a little distance between themselves. You got Font in there, Rivard, and Fortunato.
Yeah, well, Rivard actually just came across, the Hagens-Berman action rider, who's on the front right now. We started out with Font and Fortunato. But then Rivard came across, gives those guys a little bit more horsepower. Looks like one of the EF Education first men is coming back to the field, so he must have been in the middle there for a moment. And it is 2 riders from Rally UHC on the front right now, as I didn't pick out which 2 it was. And back here, the yellow jersey of Piccoli still chasing. He's got his teammate with him, but only one, and that's Eric Young. That's his sprinter. And Young will have to do everything in his power to get Piccoli back up there. Right behind also has Jordan Shane. And this is just the timing of bike racing. You have a mechanical, you're in the yellow jersey. The day has been completely uneventful for this man and his team. And now he could lose the yellow jersey.
Back up front again. Those 3 riders trying to maintain their edge. Number 46 is Lorenzo Fortunato, the Italian, riding for Neri Sotoli in that yellow kit. And you see the gap visually. Only 20 seconds according to the official race timers.
Yeah, it's very small. Fortunato, the 23-year-old Italian, in that breakaway. No pro wins. Same thing for Rivard and Font.
Bernat Font with the 303 Project team. Yeah. Font is a Spanish rider.
Yeah, the team based really in Boulder, Colorado, but he finds himself on that squad. They've got actually a fairly international team, and they have been caught now. A lot of action here just in the last handful of miles of the race. And looks to me, oh, there we go. There's the national champions jersey of Alex Howes, number 4. So realize that he won the national championship this year and he gets to wear a special jersey. Does not look like this other teammates. Piccoli still working his way through the caravan at this point with Jordan Shane left. So his teammate Young did everything he could and he has now popped. Piccoli back in it.
Here's Jimmy Whalen too. He's now way back, the Education First rider, the Australian. And this is the look at the front. Still a lot to go. We've got 5 miles left as they crest that little knoll and start getting a little bit of downhill to help them out a little bit.
Jacopo Mosca on the front for Trek Segafredo. Right behind him was Dyer Quintana.
Now Dombrowski working his way up. You saw him in the pink jersey of Education First on the outside. So Joey D trying to gain a little bit in the number 3 jersey, the pink jersey that you'll see about 7 or 8 wheels back. And now the front again as they work their way up that grind. This is the last time they'll come up the top here. And Mosca still with the pull on the front, followed right behind by Quintana.
Yep, and then you've got number 21, Rob Britton, the winner a couple of years ago, followed by number 4, Alex Howes. Right behind him, number 16, Pete Stetina. Stetina riding quite well just a couple of days ago in Leadville, and Stetina has been, last year his season was derailed by Epstein-Barr. I've got it on good authority that he's better now, and so he is feeling like he has a much better shot at doing some damage in the race this year.
Alex Howes, 18th yesterday, 23 seconds back after the prologue. Disappointed in his performance, I think, yesterday. Expected more of himself, but there he is on the front right now.
Piccoli still trying to get in this, so realize we saw him coming to the back of the group, but the group was fracturing as he was catching it. Guys were coming off, and so he's still trying to get safely into the back of the group.
Being led up by his teammate Castillo, the Mexican rider. Still a long way to go to get to the front of that pack, however, and using a lot of energy to make it up.
Using a lot of energy. It does look like he's going to make it. You can see, guys, just the attrition here. Riders continuing to pop, pop, pop. Now they drop back with Ulysses Castillo. So Castillo wasn't with him before. Remember, last time it was Jordan Shane. So Castillo in the field, drops back for Piccoli.
This effort here, though, begs the question for tomorrow for Piccoli, because he had targeted the Powder Mountain climb. Now he's putting out a lot of energy to get back here for this stage, and he's still got Powder Mountain tomorrow to look forward to as we look to the front. There's Piccoli again, working his way slowly through the peloton with the aid of Castillo.
It's really tough. I mean, it's great to see him back. I wonder if he will get a penalty from the officials. They'll let you surf through the peloton a little bit, or through the caravan a little bit when you have a mechanical as you move back up. But if you stay behind a car for very long, then they'll hit you with a time penalty.
Back to the front of the peloton again. Looks like second wind found by the spectators that was sprinting earlier, and he's back at it again.
He's looking good. Trying out for the team. So 3 men, Trek Segafredo in the top 4 there as they make that left turn and the final part of this climb before it's all downhill to the finish line. About 4.2 miles from the KOM line to the finish, and clearly we're going to have a big bunch kick. Britton out of the saddle in the blue jersey, sitting 5th wheel, winner 2 years ago. One of 3 former champions in the race, along with 2 riders from EF Education First, Lachlan Morton and Joe Dombrowski.
A little over 4 miles remaining.
Piccoli in there, but at the back, that was a hard effort. He has suffered to make it to where he is.
You see him sitting in the back third of the peloton, but at least he's regained contact with the bunch.
Yeah, he's got to be relieved.
And he will get a little bit of a downhill opportunity to try and see what's left in those legs before the finish.
Well, let's start talking about sprinters. I think it's time. Honestly, that was the last real obstacle of the race for today's stage. It went hard, it thinned out. Definitely a bunch of guys got dropped. What we don't have the luxury of knowing is which of the sprinters are still in this group. But Travis McCabe was 10th in the prologue yesterday. I think he's climbing pretty well. He's super motivated. He's a guy who has won 4 stages in Utah before, more than anybody else. And I would not be surprised if he has made this whittled down peloton. The question is, you know, is he there? We haven't seen him. He's got a blue jersey. He rides for Rally UHC. Ty Magner, another guy who is, sorry, he doesn't, he rides for Worthy. Ty Magner, another guy who is pretty motivated, rides for Rally UHC. And both of those guys are a couple of the fastest sprinters. The group being this big, 50 guys probably in there. One man you got to think about is Kiel Reinen for Trek Segafredo. You've seen a lot of his team on the front recently. He's number 15 if you get a pick of him. And there's McCabe, number 70. Yeah, sitting about 4th wheel. So McCabe is clearly there. And there's Kiel. So we've got Kiel Reinen, we've got Travis McCabe. So a couple of the fastest men in the race. Kiel typically not as quick as McCabe.
All bunched up. Yeah, just 3 miles left to go now, Todd.
Piccoli back in this race on the left side, about 5-6 riders from the front. So he has made it up to the front safely, not without a lot of wasted energy. But when you get a mechanical, all you can do is try and make the best of it.
Well, he had a 5-second cushion, 5.5-second cushion, and now he's up there with the leaders. So it looks pretty good for him to maintain that yellow jersey if he can stay with that group. He's on the right-hand side of your screen right now.
And we got an attack here coming out the left side. And this looks to me like one of our, is it a special jersey? It is. That's Lawson Craddock in the King of the Mountains jersey as he goes on the attack. So EF Education first, trying to force things a little bit. A quick response there by Schoenberger, the Austrian on the Italian Neri Satoli squad. And looks like 3 other men. And whoa. And not much response. Okay, this is late enough in the race that this could be dangerous.
You see the second group, so now there are 5 riders basically between the 2 groups that are out front, and they've got some separation from the peloton right now with 4.1K to go, so a couple of miles is all, and everybody starts the chess game up front, looking around, checking shoulders, who's going to make an attack. It looks like you got somebody trying to bridge as well. Now there's a response from the front of the peloton.
It's quite, I mean, it's not long to the finish at this point. The peloton needs to respond quickly, because if these 5 riders get unified, it's going to be hard to bring them back, even with a small gap.
That gap is now listed at 5 seconds officially, but they're approaching just 2 miles remaining. And the gap extending. You got 1 rider trying to bridge, but it's these 5 that are getting out front now. They haven't closed it up yet.
And honestly, to the benefit of the breakaway, what happens back in the field is the men that are riding for the general classification, they look at each other, and if there's nobody that they're afraid of off the front, then they look to the sprinters to try and bring it back, and everybody's looking for somebody else to do the work. Meanwhile, Lawson Craddock is off the front. He's actually an incredibly good bike racer, and they really shouldn't be giving him a gift of any time today.
He was second after yesterday's prologue, was in the hot seat for a while, had the lead until near the end when Piccoli dethroned him. But these 5 have come together up front. Still 1 person trying to bridge across, but those 5 now can work together. It looks like, well, now it's not a cohesive unit. It looked like it was for a moment.
No, really, they're not. Everybody's looking at Craddock. It seems as though they're afraid of him. There are 2 riders from Neri Satoli. one of those guys should 100% commit, and you can see the teammate behind saying, go, just drill it right now. I'm sitting on, get me to the finish line, and I'll see if I can outsprint these other guys. So a little bit of indecision both in the field and in the break. 2K to go.
It's crunch time right now. If this peloton doesn't respond very quickly, we're going to have a finish here between 5 riders.
It looks like Schoenberger now with a little bit of a gap, so completely up in the air, nothing cohesive at all. How unusual, not expected at all after all those circuits, and it looked like it was going to come down to a big bunch, and then these guys trickled away. 2 guys, then 3 came up to them, and then the 4th now is almost across.
And the peloton just let it happen. That's what's surprising, is that you had the opportunity for the peloton to be controlled off the front, and they let these 5 guys get away, maybe 6 now.
Yeah, that's why people attack. Everybody always asks, why do they attack? They always get caught. Well, once in a while, you roll the dice just right, and they come up aces.
7/10 of a mile is all that's remaining. Schoenberg out front. He may just have enough to hang on. Now you've got that chase group right behind him. Did he go too soon? That's the question. And he does have a teammate back there.
He has a legitimate shot of making this all the way to the line. I'm sure the field is charging hard behind, just out of our picture at this point. But one man, and I do believe that's Sebastian Schoenberger, the Austrian on Neri Satoli, as he continues to try to convert this into a big stage win.
He makes that left turn now. Takes a quick look over his shoulder. Up off the saddle, continues to look behind. And now look out, here it comes. Right down the stretch. Can they make up the distance on him? You've got 5 chasers. A quick look around and a check over the shoulder again, and here it comes down the stretch. It's a drag race to the finish.
And his teammate gets it. Perfect. Perfect teamwork. One rider from the team sitting on, chasing the other. We've got a crash back here in what's left of the field. And Neri Satoli gets it, celebrating teammates in the group as well. 2 riders crashing.
What a strange finish for this brand new stage here in the Tour of Utah.
Yeah, very strange finish, indeed.
It was a slow pace to begin with. It was a slow pace through most of the entire stage. And then a little bit of teamwork at the end went a long way and produced the Neri Satoli. Umberto Marnego wins this one, the North Logan to North Logan.
Yeah, just how odd was that? Lawson Craddock, who started that attack, he ends up 2nd, Avila 3rd. Griffin Easter, the rider for 303 Project out of Boulder 4th.
For those of you who speak Italian, you understood the elation there as we look at this replay again. And look, watch how things close up towards the end. Here comes that final move. And it's just a drag race down the end. Not enough gas up front to hang on. But this is one of those where just the effort at the last minute.
It's just amazing how the one rider can't hold on to it. And Marnego gets his first professional victory. The 27-year-old Italian. Wow, the elation, huh, with him and his team going across the line as well.
Absolutely. What does that mean to him? You can see right there. And the question is, where did Piccoli finish? But how about this? That was sheer joy. The whole team celebrating there, but down the stretch, an amazing teamwork race. It just didn't have quite enough to hang on to it, and so along came his teammate, and there they are. That whole team celebrating what has got to be one of the biggest wins for their young team. We'll step aside. We'll take a look at the final results officially here. But the win for Marnego, his first in a career. one is in the books, and that means stage 2 of the Larry Miller Tour of Utah tomorrow, and it is the elephant in the room, one everyone has been pointing to, Brigham City to Powder Mountain with more than 7,600 feet of climbing.
And Steve, in the last 8.6 miles, 3,868 feet of vertical. It will be a massive day for the overall contenders.
And when it starts, Lawson Craddock will wear the yellow jersey, unseating James Piccoli today because of his second place finish. Gets that 6-second time bonus. So Lawson Craddock kind of likes the way that color looks on him, even over that pink jersey.
I get the feeling every cyclist is very fond of yellow. It tends to be the color we see most often for leaders' jerseys. And Lawson Craddock capitalizing today on a good set of legs, a well-timed attack when there was some indecision in the field, and no team took responsibility to bring him back.
So that gives us the GC list right here. Craddock on top by 6 seconds. Almeida also 6 back. Then Fetkov and Murphy rounding out the top 5.
Gavin Mannion, we saw him crash earlier. One of the favorites, Joe Dombrowski, also at 21 seconds back. Boivin at 22. Keegan Swerble and Travis McCabe rounding out your top 10. Tomorrow, this will be completely redone.
And Craddock, the #1 man, stands by with our Kristen Kenny.
Well, guys, all day we talked about this one coming down to potentially a big bunch sprint, but you made that breakaway there. Was that designed the whole day?
Yeah, definitely something we talked about this morning. We know we have a strong team here, and we had a lot of cars to play. We're going to save Alex for the field sprint, and then if the timing was right, try something on the final lap, final climb. Alex made a great call out on the road. He noticed that roller just before the right-hand turn, about 3.5K to go, and said this is the great moment. So he kind of sacrificed his chances. Great leadership by him, and then I just followed what he said, and fortunately it worked out. I would have loved to take the stage for the team, but in the end, I think we're happy with second in the jersey.
Well, you didn't get the stage, but hey, you got the yellow.
Yeah, definitely exciting. First time for me leading a professional race, so definitely exciting moment for me and my family. So looking forward to tomorrow, and then hopefully handing it off to one of our climbers.
Congrats, Lawson.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we'll send it back to you. How about that?
Yeah, some kind of finish, and now the podium winner is Umberto Marnego with his first professional win. Now for his team, it's their 7th stage win this year, but Marnego, well, he's so anxious to get up top, he's got to get his gift first and the flowers, and then he'll take that #1 position there on the podium, Todd.
Very well played by him, having his teammate dangling off the front of that group, and he took the sprint from behind after his teammate sacrificed.
Yeah, Neri Sotoli with the 7th team win on the season. Lawson Craddock, 2nd, Avila, then Easter, and then Almeida, the Portuguese rider. But Kristen stands by with our stage winner, Umberto Marnego.
Well, congrats on the stage win today. Your team, the effort. How would you describe the effort of your team in this stage?
Lo sforzo della squadra durante tutta la tappa.
Ma la squadra è stata fantastica fin dall'inizio. Manuel Buongiorno è stato bravissimo a inserirsi nella prima fuga di giornata e ci ha tenuto tranquilli tutta la corsa. Nel finale, quando si è ricompattato il gruppo, si è rimasti sempre uniti, tutti quanti, e niente, quando si è scollinati l'ultimo giro della salita, che c'era stata parecchia soluzione, durante la discesa, quando è spianata, ho visto che sono partiti il mio compagno Schomberger un altro corridore e poi dietro si sono avvantaggiati altri 2 corridori. A quel punto il mio compagno mi ha fatto cenno di entrare su quei 2 corridori, mi sono inserito su quella fuga lì. Schomberger ha tirato fino alla fine a tutta, dietro ha permesso agli altri di collaborare, a me stare tranquillo, e poi niente, sulla volata finale sono riuscito a vincere. Sapevo di essere tra i più veloci, quindi ce la siamo giocata così ed è andata bene.
So the team effort was great. Buongiorno was in the breakaway, so no one had to work in the peloton. We were all together. Then in the final laps. We decided to attack after the last climb with Schomberger, and then he joined the group of Schomberger. There were 5. Schomberger worked hard for him, and in the end, he knew he was one of the fastest riders, so he decided to sprint, and it was good.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So there's your winner for Chad Andrews, Kristen Kenny, Todd Gogolski. I'm Steve Brown. That wraps up stage 1 of this year's Tour of Utah. The winner, Umberto Marnego. The Craddock wears yellow. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, stage 2 coverage, 7 p.m. Eastern. For all the latest updates, be sure to check out tourofutah.com. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, on the Tour of Utah.